So economics is a really interesting one because it's a subject which is constantly evolving and changing over time. You're looking at the data and you're seeing why different trends are happening. Economics brings answers in a variety of disciplines into many different questions and fields of studies, which makes it a very interesting thing to be studying.
If you're interested in the world, interested in solving problems, thinking about what works and what doesn't work in terms of policy, then economics is a subject for you.
When I was looking at universities to look for open days, Kent was really strong for economics, so I came to visit, really enjoyed the open day, got a friendly vibe. I just feel like it's very easy to do well because of the support around you and you're not left to your own devices.
I really wanted to go to a campus university. I really like Canterbury, and I like that the countryside is just the other side of the campus.
Kent's consistently rated outstanding in teaching, learning and outcomes for students. We have lots of different innovations in terms of teaching and learning in the School of Economics. So in first year we have lots of professional economics programs, and as you move through the program we have more quantitative work, specialised in financial markets and development, and in the School of Economics you can also undertake a dissertation, which is a prolonged piece of research, and that's in the third year.
I choose Kent University because I like the campus life. I'm confident that Kent can bring me to an exciting journey.
During university, we've built up on a lot of skills, such as doing presentations, working on big projects such as coursework, researching by myself, and all of this was really helpful when doing my placement because I had to do a lot of independent projects and then I often had to present it to a lot of other people. My placement was really fun. It was incredibly different to how I thought it would be. I honestly had no clue what it would be like, and working in policy at such an amazing time as this was incredible.
Education, particularly at undergraduate level, needs to be embracing across the whole of the discipline. I think it's really essential to build the community of economists, both staff, students at different levels of their study, so they all feel that there's a common purpose, that they're studying something which they can achieve because they see those ahead of them, and they can see where they're going because they can see the fruits of their labours.
Almost 90% of our students are in a graduate position. Equally, something about approaching 25% of our students go on and do postgraduate study. They go on and go to the best universities both here and abroad to undertake MSc, MA, and then several will obviously then go on and do PhD. An economics degree will basically allow you, if you've got the wherewithal, to do any job you choose to do.
Hello and welcome to the School of Economics Virtual Open Day. We're here to show you everything you need to know about studying at the University of Kent. Over the next hour or so, we'll be talking to lecturers and students to get a flavour of life on campus and what is entailed on studying the economics course. Whether you've got questions about admissions, job prospects, or how best to soak up the student experience at the University of Kent, we'll be here to answer them for you, and you can send in those questions on the YouTube live comments panel that is on screen. Now, as we're all obviously social distancing and remoting in from our various homes, we may encounter some technical glitches, so do bear with us as we try and sort those out. Now, let's begin, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the head of school, Professor Alistair Bailey, and Director of Admissions, Dr. Luke Buchanan-Hodgman. Dr. Buchanan-Hodgman, we're going to come to you in just a bit, but Professor Bailey, let's go to you first. Tell us a little bit about the School of Economics.
Well, thank you very much, Cameron. Well, to start, I want to better welcome everyone to the School of Economics, and very much welcome to all of you. And hopefully we'll be able to do that in person soon enough too. The School itself, to give you a flavour of what the place is like and what the people are like, the school is home to about 41 academic members of staff, and we're drawn from across the planet. So there are one or two people from the UK, but there's people from Africa, China, Australia, New Zealand, and people from the US too. So we're a really diverse staff body, which is really quite a good thing because that brings many different perspectives. We also have a very diverse student base, and very proud that we are able to say that. It makes us a place and a school as a whole, so staff and students, that's really welcoming of everyone. Now, that's fair enough. It's great that we can be that. But the important thing is very much what we can bring to your education, but then to your student experience too. Economics at Kent has got really good strength in depth across a broad spectrum of the discipline of economics. So we've got a number of staff who work on macroeconomics, a number on finance, microeconomic problems, whether that be in relation to labour, the environment, food supply, and even health. We've got people across those two areas that work both on theory and upon application. And I think it's that breadth, whilst at the same time having depth in each of those areas, that really brings something special to Kent. We cover pretty much everything, and that's really important for someone thinking about starting their career as an undergraduate. And that's reflected in the research centres, which of course you're about to see on our webpage, and discusses the sorts of problems that staff are very much focused on. Certainly all of our academic staff do teach, okay? So that doesn't happen everywhere. Often, the best stars are being kept away from students. That's not our philosophy. It's completely opposite. The vast majority of our staff do produce research of really strong international standing, and research that has influence in the world around us in the policy sphere. So certainly the sort of really the topical projects that people are working on right now will include COVID-19 and do include COVID-19, the effects upon the economy, and then also thinking about how policy in places like the Indian subcontinent is working as it reflects and changes in response to COVID-19. Not a particularly difficult, easy thing to deal with. And the effect that all of this will have on productivity, which is going to be important things for all of us. The message I want to convey to you is that economics has never been more an important thing for you to think about studying. COVID itself threatens the futures, particularly of the younger generation, including yourselves. Okay, it's going to cast a long shadow. We know that in terms of its effect on tax. And we know that it's going to be something which is going to be having to be paid for some time. And this is where we're really able to help you. We can both help you directly by making sure that you're on the path toward your own future as an economist, but also our research helps influence the policy setting in the world around us. My best advice to you, and to any 18-year-old, and I have a daughter who's 18, and the advice is the same, is don't delay the start of your future, the path to your future success. It's really important, especially as a recession is likely to be coming, that you get ahead now, but also that you're part of the solution to reducing the size of this long shadow of COVID. Lastly, I would say, come to Kent for another reason. We know that most universities are going to some degree online this coming year. Kent's no exception, but Kent Economics has a 2-year head start over all of our competitors in this. We've been delivering online now to apprentices who need exactly the same type of training as you do in the Government Economic Service and the Bank of England, among others. Our job now is to take that experience, make it work for everyone, but also to make sure that we can do and provide you with the extracurricular that you expect from university life. And that's the thing that's exercising me at the moment. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Professor Bailey. A really good advert for the School of Economics there. And we're already getting some questions from you at home about that. So do keep them coming in. We're going to answer them in just a few minutes. But over to you, Dr. Luke Buchanan-Hodgman. Do you want to tell us a little bit more as well about life and the course of the School of Economics?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you a bit about the courses that we offer, so the pathways that we offer at the School of Economics at Kent, and then I'll fill in a bit more about what Alistair just mentioned, about the ways that we've innovated in teaching over the past couple of years and how you're going to benefit from that. So depending on which pathway you choose with us, you may have gone for a single honours economics programme, you may have gone for a joint honours with, say, econ management or econ politics. If you come with us on a single honours programme, in the first year, it's really an introduction to the subject. So we're going to be covering principles, which is A-level, but in a bit more detail. We'll also require you to take mathematics and statistics. And if you're on a single honours programme, you'll also be studying data analysis. And each of these modules has a slightly different way of teaching. And we can incorporate more online material in some modules and a little bit less in others, but I'll walk you through that in a minute. So that's really the first year. It's putting the skeleton up. It's really the framework of your economics education at university. In the second year, we move on to really adding the meat on the bones of that skeleton, where we add more theory in. So you'll have to take, if you're a single honours student, macroeconomics and microeconomics. You'll also take, if you're a single honours student, some econometrics programs. And it's really in second year where the difference becomes quite clear between a single honours programme and a joint honours programme. If you're a joint honours student, you must take macroeconomics and microeconomics, which just goes into more detail about some of the main theories in economics. And you won't have to take econometrics because you'll have to take a number of different modules from your other subject. So say, for example, you're an economics and politics student. You have to take microeconomics and macroeconomics. But in addition to those two modules, you also have to take modules from the politics department. And as I said, this is where you have the ability to build on that base level of theory, but also you can start to select different modules. So if you're a single honours student, you've got those 90 credits that you need to take, but that gives you some leeway to add to those with a couple of wild modules or optional modules. So you can begin to focus on finance, you can begin to focus on policy analysis. We offer a range of modules to suit each different taste, and this is where you can begin, as I said, to specialise. But really that is amplified in your third year, where you have one of two compulsory modules to take. So you need to take either a dissertation. So the extended essay is slightly shorter, and the dissertation is slightly longer, slightly larger body of work. And the remaining modules, you can select a range of different wild modules. So you can really start to hone your econometric skills, for example. And if you're doing econ and econometrics as a program, that's going to be compulsory anyway. Or you can start to focus on finance or international economics or environmental economics. There's a whole range of different options. But really this year, what's interesting is the blended learning approach. Now, Alistair mentioned that, and we've been ahead of this curve now for a couple of years. We've been incorporating online materials in innovative ways now because of our apprenticeship program. And because of that, we've got a wide range of experience across the faculty. There's a number of us that have been actively engaged now for some time, working on these different innovations and bringing them into our internal course. Whereas really they began in our high degree apprenticeship program, which was mostly distance learning with a bit of interaction. But we began to bring in the best of those different features into our current programs, and we've got excellent reviews for doing that. So it's really the best of both worlds. And I think students at the moment, when you're thinking about whether you should go to university this year, it often seems like a very stark choice. Like the cohort that's just come has had a purely campus-based experience, and the cohort that's coming, such as you lot, will have a purely distance-based experience. And that's really not the decision that you're faced with. More and more campus education is being supplemented and complemented with these nice innovations that improve the ability for you to learn, and it really maximizes the enjoyment you'll get from coming to university. So The blended learning approach allows us to amalgamate distance learning and campus learning in a way that improves your experience rather than diminishes it. And a couple of examples I've got is for a few modules that we currently offer in first year. So I'm the module convener for data analysis. And the really critical thing about data analysis is that it's a skills-based module. So when you finish the module, you should have a toolkit, a selection of statistical methods that you can use and apply in the workplace. And that's great. And in a traditional setup where you have lectures and seminars, you can have a good experience. But what I've done is began incorporating videos that are quite interactive, that walk you through these problem sets step by step. When I'm sitting at home on my home computer, I record these solutions for my students. So not only do they have me in a terminal session where I can walk around the classroom, see what they're doing, give them some guidance, but then they can go home, and in the comfort of their home, they can watch me in the comfort of my home going through the problems that they've just encountered. And this just improves their experience rather than diminishes it. And also it allows me to do some nice real-time applications for the skills that we're learning. So last year we had this policy document about HS2 and the spiraling costs, and I incorporated that and did a video at home, and the students really got a lot from that. And it's not just data analysis, it's also mathematics, which you would think would be much more of a sort of hands-off and high theory kind of subject to study. But there's entry tests that you do online. The weaker students then get put through intensive training. You have weekly quizzes to monitor your progress. And this all supplements the very traditional lecture seminar approach. So hopefully that gives you a better idea about what blended learning means, because really it's about improving your experience overall.
Sounds like a really exciting and jam-packed course there, Dr. Luke Buchanan-Hodgman, and also Professor Bailey. Thank you very much for your introductions. We're going to go on to a few questions now. As I said, you can, watching at home, put those questions in the live YouTube comments panel, and we'll try and get those answered for you throughout the virtual open day. We've got a question in first for Professor Bailey. This from Oladele in Nigeria. You're obviously talking about the importance of that international student community, Professor Bailey. Oladele wants to know, is there any scholarship program available for international students?
There are scholarships available for anyone with excellent grades. Outside of that, there's nothing special for individual countries that are run by the university itself. So, no is the answer. Nothing which is dedicated or that would preclude anyone else.
But a real incentive, obviously, as you said, to work hard and get those good grades to come to campus. Tell us a little bit about those the scholarship program that is available and what is entailed with those grades in order to be on that program.
Okay. Luke would probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if someone were to get the equivalent of A, B at A level, then those would come automatically. You wouldn't need to apply for them. As soon as those grades come through to the university through UCAS, then this happens. Now, the way that works is the scholarship would be paid to you direct, and so, for example, if one were eligible for the student loan company financing, then it wouldn't change the fee and what you were able to borrow, but it would mean that your living costs were supplemented.
Absolutely, that's good to hear. We've also had a couple of questions in on the same topic from Theo in Essex and Samantha all the way in Dubai. This question for you, Dr. Buchanan-Hodgman. Their question is about accommodation. When do they need to apply for accommodation?
I think because of the delay that we've had in terms of making choices, that the deadline is probably drawn out a bit longer. I imagine sometime in August. You would have to check the website, and I would do that quite regularly at the moment, given how much is going on, just to be sure of the date. But I imagine it will be sometime in late August. But I'd like to also come back a moment, if I could, about something that Alistair just mentioned. There are international scholarships, but I think the deadline has passed for them now. I had to make recommendations for that a couple of weeks ago, and I think there were £8,000 for those international scholarships. But yeah, the deadline has passed.
So obviously good to know for any students who might be looking at the long-term future, any who will be applying next year, to know that that is the case. We've also had a question about internships, and I'm going to come to both of you for this one, because you both obviously have that really strong idea of the industry and have different perspectives on it. Let's start with you, Dr. Buchanan-Hodgman. We've had a question asking, does Kent offer any internships or work experience guidance?
We have lots of work experience guidance. We've got dedicated staff that focus on employability. So there's members of staff that help you build your CV. There's members of staff that give you guidance when it comes to interviews. And it's really important now that academic staff and support staff have up-to-date knowledge about how industry is changing in terms of the recruitment practices. There's a lot more online recruitment material now, and that was pre-COVID. So I imagine we're moving into a world now where most of the recruitment material will move online structurally from now on, I imagine. But we do provide lots of support. So as I said, CV building, we can give you interview support. We also have a very active tutorial system. So students, when they come to us, will be matched with some academics that hopefully you'll go through your degree program with. And they're always there to give you guidance about study, but also about the different kind of employment you could find with your economics degree. So there's a lot of support and very dedicated staff that focus on that in particular.
I think that'll be very reassuring to hear from a lot to those students that support is there. Professor Bailey, a little bit more about that kind of the hands-on components as part of the course. Are there any links with the industry that students will be able to capitalise on?
Well, yes, because our staff do produce research for a wide range of bodies, whether they be in the UK or elsewhere. The employability teams have ongoing relationships with employers too. I think actually we're also bringing more and strengthening many of those through our delivery of apprenticeships, because that is very much a relationship between an employer outside of the university and ourselves. And that helps too.
Absolutely. As I said, keep those questions coming in on our YouTube page. Thank you all very much for sending those in so far. Professor Bailey, I want to stick with you, just kind of talking a little bit more about the course and what is part of the course. How is it divided in terms of coursework, maybe practical work and exams? How is that sort of divvied up?
Okay, well, you're touching on a number of things there, and that is, how does the credit get assigned? How do you win credit for each of the modules? And there are a number of modules that we currently run, which are coursework only. One of Luke's is, one of the ones he mentioned there on data, doesn't have a final exam. Coursework and grades are won throughout the term. For other courses at the moment, for example, a second year course in macro, one of the main core modules, might have a sort of 80-20 split, depending upon how that was actually devised. We are looking, and we're constantly looking to see whether or not that split of weight between examinations and continuous assessment is the right one. And I think it's important that we continue to think about ways in which we can innovate. So quite often, typical theory-based courses will include an examination, and that will be weighted relatively highly, either at a 60% or 80% weighting.
And Dr. Buchanan-Hodgman, a little bit more about the course there. I know that many students will want to know about contact hours. What is the contact like with lecturers for those prospective students?
As Alistair said earlier, all of our lecturing staff teach, which isn't as common as you would think, actually. And we have, it depends on the module. Different modules have different contact allocations. So, for example, in one of my modules, we have very regular computer classes and workshops. And in other modules, it's slightly different. You maybe have seminars and lectures, but I would say as a rough guide, you can think of the contact time decreasing as you move through your degree program. And that's by design, because when you come to university, you're finishing your A-levels or IB, and you're used to quite a high level of contact. And really what we're trying to do is make you independent learners by the time you get to your third year. So by the time you're undertaking third year study, your contact time has decreased somewhat, maybe 10 hours a week contact time, I would say. Whereas if you're in your first year, I'd say roughly 13 to 14, but contact time does vary marginally between modules. So we have a professional economics module in first year where you will have lectures and 2-hour-long workshops on a weekly basis. So that's quite contact heavy. Whereas, say, for example, principles, that maybe has a different contact structure. But I would say as a rough guide, 13 to 14 hours in your stage one, which is first year, and sliding down marginally as you move through your degree program.
And we've heard a little bit from both of you that the academics are very hands-on, are very involved in assisting students. In kind of relation to that, tell us, Professor Bailey, a little bit about the expertise of the academics. What kind of industry experience do all the academics have? What are some of the research projects they're involved in? And maybe give us a little bit of a background about the staff at the School of Economics.
Okay, so not uncommon to most places, most academic schools, whether it be at Kent or elsewhere. Most of our staff probably haven't been out of academia for very much, certainly very much of their lives. That doesn't mean they've become myopic and institutionalized, but far from it. They spend their time looking outside. So we have people who will and do produce research projects and work for the Bank of England, the Central Bank of the UK, the European Central Bank, and work on World Bank questions, Asian Development Bank, and things like that. So the type of work that they're often looking at is how does one improve growth. So some of them will have a very much strong focus on productivity and how that may have changed, and how policy might be used to increase productivity, which is really important for all of us, because that's the thing that generates the change in our wages for all of us. Some of our micro colleagues might be looking at development questions, for example. So we have a colleague who's working on the economics of child marriage in Bangladesh, looking at life chances in India. We have other colleagues who focus on problems in Ghana, or maybe in rural Malawi, which I've done in the past. And we have people who work on labour market type questions. And quite often those all have a policy focus, and the work that we do and the papers that we write are very much designed to try and influence the policy setting, with a view really, if one boils it down to the simplest of levels, is to try and help the policy makers of the world to produce policies that will make us all better off.
It's a really diverse range there that you've described. We've also got a question in for Dr. Buchanan Hodgman. Could an EPQ be used as evidence towards our grades, even if our offers don't include them?
Absolutely. And when we look at applications, we don't just focus purely on the A-levels and ignore everything else in the application. If you've done EPQs, and it can be across different subjects, these all contribute to helping us make the decision about whether to provide you with an offer or not. Because often you'll see some really diverse EPQs. Some EPQs focus on economic problems. Other EPQs are completely random and tell us a bit about the candidate, about the applicant that's applying. It could be that you've done very different A-levels, and you're studying economics, and that's a good thing. You can come from a history background, a science background, a humanities background. There's so many different subdisciplines in economics that you can begin to focus on as you move through the program. And as I said to you earlier, there's a lot of choice in our pathways, and we build that choice in so that people can begin to specialize in their second and third years. So EPQs are great. I like seeing what applicants have done. It also shows a degree of ambition, because if you're taking EPQ, you didn't necessarily have to. You want to do some independent research in an area that you find interesting, and to learn a bit more about the people that are applying is only a good thing for us.
You alluded to it a bit there, Dr. Buchanan-Hodgman, about that there's so many different areas that are focused on in economics, and there's kind of a big crossover between disciplines. I guess for a lot of students that would be looking at this, is they might not necessarily have done economics at school, but are interested in pursuing it in further education. Is that something that is recommended and is open to students, that if they might not have that background from secondary school, that they're still able to make the jump to tertiary education?
I didn't have economics at level, and I think, I had different interests. I like politics, I like learning about history, and there were so many different areas of economics that tangentially related to these things that pulled me in, because it adds strings to your bow. If you're interested in history and you enjoyed taking history A level, and you'd like to know more about more recent history, perhaps you've learned about the Great Depression, which is in the A level history syllabus, and you want to know more, we offer courses on financial crises. There are modules that we offer by an economic historian that could teach you a bit more about those episodes. So, economics isn't the reserve of only people that have A level economics. And actually, sometimes, if you're coming to it with a completely fresh mind, and other diverse interests, maybe philosophy, maybe law, psychology, each of these different disciplines touch economics. Whether we're thinking about the importance of institutions, then you could think about how law relates to economics. If you're thinking about behavioral economics, and you've got psychology, financial crisis, you've got history, policy, you've got politics. There's different ways in which economics leans into other disciplines. So regardless of whether you study it or not, I think, it's got.
Well, talking about that, I think it's a very good segue to look at a short video that we've got about the value of economics and studying at the School of Economics. We're going to play that in just a sec, and we'll be joined by Dr. Buchanan-Hodgman a little bit later on, but that's all from Professor Bailey. Professor Bailey, thank you very much for telling us a little bit more about the School of Economics. We'll have this short clip for you, and then we'll be hearing from some current students at Kent. We'll be with them very shortly.
I couldn't believe what was going on around me. The way that prices were moving around for things that I was buying in shops, the way that the policies that were being talked about as responses to the financial crisis, it seemed completely alien and completely unreal to me.
The thing that attracted me to macroeconomics in the first place is that it's the sort of the field in economics which deals with very big questions, so the type of questions that affect everyone in the economy. And of course, when we had the financial crisis, lots of new questions became available for people to answer, and this made it a very exciting and interesting area to be in.
I wanted to better understand how some problem with US mortgages could be affecting my life in New Zealand in such a meaningful way.
I was always aware that there were poor countries. I was born in India. My family moved around a lot. I grew up in Nigeria and also in the US and the UK. So I knew from that experience that there were huge differences in living standards around the world, and I was troubled by them, even as a little kid.
When I was growing up, one of the things that puzzled me, or something that I observed, was some very well-off people, but lots of people also living in poverty.
Why are poor countries, poor? Why are some countries rich? That's the fundamental question of development economics.
In modern economies, the way that we experience and the way that we share these experiences are also shaped by government policies. You will have heard of austerity in the UK. This was a set of policies that shaped how some groups in society experienced the recession versus other groups in society. And these choices, these policies, they have profound impacts on people's lives.
So it wasn't until I sort of, heard about the experience of one country that was able to go from poor to rich in a very short period that I started to become interested in this possibility. And once I started thinking about that, I found it hard to think about anything else.
So in my own work, I've been lucky enough to be able to collect my own data. I think one of the most interesting aspects of my research is actually going out to these settings, seeing what's going on there. It can be an incredibly enriching experience, but it's quite fun, to be honest. So
I've been here for a very long time, and the research environment has changed and improved dramatically in the past decade. We have a variety of colleagues within many areas of expertise. We have a large group of macroeconomists. We have a group of colleagues who come from very different backgrounds, different research cultures, and that enriches a lot the research culture of the school. So it's a pleasure to carry out research in the School of Economics.
Financial crises are not new, and for a long time we've had financial crises that have affected people's lives in all areas of the economy. Over the last 150 years, we have learned a few things. So the crisis that we suffered in 2009, while it was one of the biggest crises that Western economies had suffered, in many countries the effects of that crisis were not as severe as earlier crises had been. The work that I'm doing is to help further improve this policy making, further improve our responses to these crises when they happen, and to make sure that the costs of these crises are not concentrated among people who have the least capacity to bear them.
At one point in the course, I actually teach them some of my own work, so they get a sense of what I, as one of their instructors, is working on, and they can see that research isn't something which is sort of dreamed up and handed down. It's something that people actually work on, and that they could be involved in as well if they wanted to be.
The syllabus in economics in general is very nimble and it's very dynamic, and it responds very quickly to the economic questions of the time and the questions that are interesting the general public, the questions that are interesting academics, the questions that are interesting policymakers. And I think that's what makes it an attractive proposition to potential students at a graduate level and at an undergraduate level as well. They see what's on the syllabus and they see that it relates quite sharply to what is currently being discussed.
You don't go to university to learn particular topics. You come to university to learn how to think, and very importantly, how to come up with new and important questions.
Welcome back to the School of Economics Virtual Open Day. We're here to answer your questions about attending the University of Kent. And we're now joined by some students of the School of Economics here to answer those questions. Do keep them coming in. Now, let's get a little introduction from everyone in the group. Joel, let's come to you first. Tell us a little bit about your School of Economics experience.
Hey, yeah, so I'm Joel, second year going into third year undergraduate student. I originally applied on the straight economics course, and I've kind of been switching, not really too sure what I'm doing at the minute, but looking at economics with econometrics. Yeah, I'm involved in loads of different societies, anything from a cappella to economic society, Christian Union. So very involved in those sort of things. And I'm also an ambassador, which is kind of why I'm here, really. And yeah, it's great to be able to talk about the department here at the University of Kent, because it's amazing, and the lecturers are really friendly. I don't want to give too much away because you're going to ask questions, but that's probably good for now.
Perfect. That's a really good start, Joel. Thank you very much. Jenny, let's head on over to you. Tell us a little bit about your time at Kent.
Hi, so I'm Jenny. I'm a third year economics with econometrics student. So I'm hopefully graduating real soon. Like Joel, I started with economics, and around my end of my second year, I found like I really understood econometrics. So that's stats for economics, in a way that I hadn't understood stats before. And I sort of think that shows like the teaching is so good here. I found that I was good at something I didn't think I was good at. So I decided to take the econometrics modules so I could switch. And So yeah, I did that, and I found I've really enjoyed my time here, and I've done lots of different things. I've been really involved in societies. I do a lot of music society, and I think it's a really good place to study.
Fantastic. And we're also joined by Lydia. Lydia, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to at Kent and how you came to Kent in the first place.
I'm quite different. I'm a joint, so I do economics and management. I came to Kent because I've heard it was really, really good. And I'm currently, there's a church that I go to at Kent. It's exciting. I've joined loads of societies, and I came to Kent because it's so diverse. I've met a lot of people, and the opportunities that Kent gave me was amazing. The workshops, um, yeah, I didn't do maths or economics in A levels, but Kent really helped me try to understand economics, and the management side, it was fun as well.
Well, it sounds like you've all had a really pleasant experience, which is good to hear, especially for those students who are still sending in those questions. Thank you very much for doing so. Let's come to you first, Joel, because you're talking about all the societies that you're a member of. We got a question from Julie in Birmingham who said, what is there to do on campus?
Oh goodness, I don't even know where to begin. Yeah, okay. So on campus, there's loads of different pubs and bars. I quite enjoy going to something like K-Bar and just playing a bit of pool, which is great fun. Yeah, so societies wise, literally anything goes really. In terms of if you want to start a society, you can tell Kent Union, which are the body that organise societies, and you can run it. So there's another ambassador who's actually not here today, whose friend started a Brexit society, or I think it was an anti-Brexit society, but semantics, doesn't matter. You can start your own society, anything from sports through to, I know some of the seminar leaders do salsa society. I think we had a live stream of that a few weeks ago. Yeah, literally anything you want to do, you can do. Yeah, kayaking society, things like that. Yeah.
So lots to enjoy. Lydia, what about yourself as well? You said that you've got that, you've got kind of a split course that you're dealing with. What do you do to unwind as a student? We've had Brandon from Hackney asking about the sports that are available in Kent. Is there a real access to that for students?
Yes, you can get a gym membership for the whole year. I think it's a silver or gold membership, depending on what you want to do. For me, I've been quite busy this year. I've joined the Innovation Weekender that was sponsored by PepsiCo, which was really, really cool. And it actually gave me a lot to write on my CV. I did iTeams. So Kent is really, really helpful. And it was more so I met a lot of people. There's so much to do on campus. Honestly, it's so fun and it's so huge that I've just discovered Parkwood and I've been here for 2 years now. I've literally it's been fun. Sports society, there's loads for girls as well. I know about netball, football, there's cheerleading, oh my gosh, and there's pole dancing.
So really something for everybody to enjoy. You spoke a little bit about the Innovation Weekender, which brought together students from Kent and a number of other universities in the southeast. And as you said, run by PepsiCo. Have you found, being on the course, that there's been those really good links with large or small businesses that has kind of given you an idea what you maybe want to do after you finished your degree?
Yes, it actually has. That weekend it was really, really good. I wanted to do project management, so I've learned how to work with teams. It was with University of Essex, UEA, and another university actually in the background. You can see my certificate actually, but yeah, it was really, really helpful and it was fun. And PepsiCo, actually, one of the people that was working there, they messaged me and said September I should apply for next year's summer internships. I'm excited about that. There's loads to do in Kent that actually really helps you with small organizations and big organizations. Is quite great for your CV as well, to be doing something alongside your degree. And yeah.
Lots of doors open by the sounds of it from your experience. Jenny, a question for you from Marie. She's asked, what's the level of maths like on the programme?
So when you first start in your first year, some people have done A-level maths and some people haven't done A-level maths. Personally, I did do A-level maths. So there's two streams. There's mode A, which is harder, and mode B. So depending on the maths you've done. So my point is that don't worry if you haven't done maths, because there's lots of people who won't have done maths. And the point of in your first year is to sort of catch up the students who haven't done maths. And that's really helpful. And then even in your second and third year, whenever like maths comes up within economics, there's always special help. Some lecturers put on extra sessions just for the maths part. So yeah, there's lots of support for if you haven't done maths and you want to apply that to economics.
And have you found that the support, like you said there's been support in terms of the maths side of it. Have you found the support generally from academics and from the course has been there for you when you've needed it, whether it's been for lectures or whether it's been for coursework or maybe for accommodation questions and you've needed to go to somewhere else on campus to or someone else from the university to ask those? Do you find that there's been that support there when needed?
Yeah, I feel there's a lot of support at Kent for everything, whether it's academic. So I always find what helps is that the lecturers are really enthusiastic about their teaching. So I don't know if that's true for other universities, because I think some other universities might be more focused on research, but at Kent, lecturers are really focused on teaching. So they're always willing to help you. They really enjoy helping you. For other stuff like welfare, there's lots of support on campus, because I know whatever university you go to, some people don't always have the easiest time, whether it's first, second and third year, because it is a massive change. Where there's lots of support, whether from the university or from Kent Union, and you always get assigned an academic advisor to help you out in your first year. And there's also lots of welfare support from the school.
And Joel, we heard you talking a little bit about what's on offer on campus, all the various activities that can be enjoyed and the places to enjoy them. We saw in the short clip, we saw the Kennedy building where everything takes place. Tell us a little bit about the facilities and the resources on offer to economics students.
Yeah, of course. I think it's a very big thing at the minute. Obviously, a lot of students are probably going to be wondering how much of that they're going to experience. So don't zone out now just because you're not sure if you're going to use it in first term or whatever, because you're definitely going to use the facilities over your time here. Kennedy is a fantastic building. I've experienced in first year not having Kennedy and in second year having it. So it's been a mix of both, and it's the difference it makes in that you're walking around your lecturers. You can really speak to them whenever you want to. The study spaces are often on the same floor as the lecturers' offices. They're easily accessible. Often I've just sort of knocked on their door and been like, oh, hey, can I ask you a question? And it really just builds that community. You'll see people walking around. And as you can see on the pictures now, hopefully the open spaces where you can study, it really means that there's that community feel when there's an area that you all know that you can go to study. And so you don't just get to know the lecturers, but you also get to know the students as well. And when you're constantly bumping into each other in the same spaces, it really does generate that community and help you to feel like you kind of belong here. And it's also handy to have a nice quiet space to be able to study, especially if the library is getting busy.
And Jenny, what would you say about the accommodation at the University of Kent? Did you stay in halls, and how did you find halls of residence if you did?
Yeah, so I stayed in halls in my first year. So I think what's good with the Kent is that there's a massive range depending on how much you want to pay for your accommodation. So you can have ensuite rooms, you have catered, or you can have self-catered. There's lots of halls in the centre of campus, and then there's a place called Parkwood, which I think Lydia mentioned earlier, which is about 10 minutes off campus, and it's a whole student village. I know that everyone I know who has lived there say it's the best place to live. Yeah, so there's lots of different range of rooms you can get on campus, and I think it's really good to stay on campus on your first year because everything's new and it just sort of helps you meet people and sort of adjust to your new surroundings.
Lydia, a question for you as well. We've heard you talking about those experiences that you've had at the University of Kent. How would you describe the area of Canterbury, and have you had a chance to venture further afield during your time at Kent?
Canterbury is actually quite fun. I feel like as a student town, there's loads of things to do. Like there was this there's I don't even know what it's called. Oh my gosh, I forgot. It was when you wear those suits and stuff. But there's loads of things to do in town. There's bars, there's restaurants, there's clubs. Um, we have a whole town where there's shopping malls to stop the shop at. Canterbury is quite fun at night, especially. It's quite hard to get there around a bit if you don't know the area, but if you have the bus pass for the year, it's much easier to get around and understand the buses and things to do. But yeah, first year is the best time to stay on campus, really.
And also I guess the links to London as well. We've heard a little bit about how there is that really close proximity to London and also to the beach as well. It's only a matter of minutes from the University of Kent campus to the beach. So tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, I'm from London, so South London as well. It's really easy to get to. So I drive, but if I didn't want to drive, there's a straight coach that drops me right outside University of Kent, which I'm so happy for. And to the beach, there's Margate, there's Whitstable. It's really, really fun. During these times now, if this pandemic didn't happen, we would have gone to the beach. There's loads of fun fairs there, rides during this time, like May, June. But the commute to London is not that bad. It's really, really quite close. We have a lot of commuters, and it's it's really not that far. It's probably an hour and a half.
Brilliant. Well, Lydia, Jenny, and Joel, thank you all very, very much for answering questions that have been coming in. We're going to be seeing some of you in just a sec to finish answering those questions off. But first, here's another short video about the course, about the facilities on offer, and industry opportunities at the School of Economics.
I think that the University of Kent has given me lots of opportunities to change as a person. I'm not just in the School of Economics, but I am also very involved in the music department and I do some volunteering as well. The university promotes extracurricular activities, so you're not just focusing on your academic experience, and I think that's really important for well-being when you're at university.
The University of Kent's really helped me and supported me in everything to do with employability, with my CV, application tests, interview prep, everything.
It's about bringing them and making them aware that with a degree, what they can do, how they can use it, and how essentially they can then approach, if you like, the wider world once they graduate.
I now utilise my time a lot more since doing my placement, and now I think I'm a lot better at waking up earlier, staying at university all day, doing my work during the day, and then in the evenings I can relax more. So I find that my work-life balance is a lot better now.
almost 90% of our students are in a graduate position. Equally, something about approaching 25% of our students go on and do postgraduate study. They go on and go to the best universities both here and abroad to undertake MSc, MA, and then several will obviously then go on and do PhD. An economics degree will basically allow you, if you've got the wherewithal, to do any job you choose to do.
My first impression about the Kennedy building was wow.
The seminar rooms are really close and sort of integrated, so you can come out of seminars and you'll be walking amongst lecturers.
There's lots of social spaces around the building, and it's a really nice atmosphere, and it gives the School of Economics a really nice sense of community.
The engagement happens pretty much spontaneously. It's really revolutionised much that we've been able to do.
Welcome back. Joel and Jenny have stuck around, and Dr. Buchanan-Hodgman has rejoined us to answer some of your questions. Do keep them coming in on the YouTube comments panel. We got one question from Theo Hart asking, should I defer? Dr. Buchanan-Hodgman, we spoke about this and we heard from you a little earlier on saying how you don't think the situation at the moment is going to impede on that student experience, and we're obviously going through a really historic time at the moment, and we heard a little bit about those what lecturers are doing in the midst of all of this. I guess kind of in response to Theo's question, what would you suggest? Should he defer and wait until we kind of got through the situation, or would you say that School of Economics is primed to still give a good university experience and learn from a really valuable course?
But I mean, there's no doubt that we're primed to give a great experience. But whenever people ask us, should we defer, it's such a personal question. And it's very hard for us to give a sort of clear guide to students on what they should do, because we don't know their particular circumstances. But all I can say is that we're primed. As I said earlier, we've got lots of experience with providing this sort of blended approach. We've been doing it for a while already. But also, what Alistair said was quite important as well, that we're entering a period of economic turmoil, and whenever that happens, often the value of what we call the outside option, what you could do if you weren't coming to university, that diminishes quite significantly during times of economic crisis. So I think if you're thinking about deferment, there's a couple of things you really ought to consider. The first is, will it be more difficult next year if there are mass deferrals across the country, which there could well be? And also, is there something in particular that you really want to do if you're going to defer to fill that year up? Because, if you're just thinking of deferring because you're unsure of the quality of the education you'll be experiencing at Kent, then I wouldn't say that's a concern. It's certainly not a concern to me. Creating materials for the modules that I run in both first year and second year, I know they're going to be as good as they've ever been. And now that I'm incorporating more materials into them, actually should be an improvement in both of the modules that I'm running. So I wouldn't say that's a concern. But again, these are very difficult personal decisions to make. But if there's something that you really are sort of burning to do, and that option's still there, and you really, really are concerned about any distance learning, then maybe deferring is an option for you. But in all but the most extreme cases, I wouldn't say so, no.
Yeah, as you said, it's a very personal thing that many people will be considering, and at the end of this, I will be giving out a few emails that you can, if you have any other burning questions, that you can contact regarding deferrals or any other questions relating to the course. You talked a little bit about it there, Dr. Buchanan-Hodgman, about how you're going to be incorporating what is currently going on into your learning materials, and we've got a taster lecture after we've had our Q&A that you've shown about talking about coronomics and about the situation at the moment. And I guess we saw it in the video earlier on about a lot can be learned from these ongoing situations and crises, and that can really enhance a learning experience for students, how they can incorporate that into their learning.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm obviously community other academics, even though, you know, we're obviously all working from home at the moment. There's a nice collegiate feel still, although we're on a distance platform. And I know that many other conveners are looking at ways to incorporate what's going on into their modules. So I know some academics are looking at incorporating SIR models, so modelling the infectability of the crisis. They're looking to show students how that modelling is undertaken, and that's in more econometric classes. I am one of the 2 conveners for second year macroeconomics. So incorporating policy responses to the current crisis, the impact on the economy is something I'll certainly be doing. I mean, last year there was a general election, and what I did with my macro students is to run them through the different manifestos, and those kind of lectures that students can see have been developed in real time, quite literally the night before and into early morning, the early hours of the morning. Students appreciate that, and I know that I'm not alone among colleagues to incorporate these things into the classroom as much as we can. And obviously now we've got even more material than we've ever had, really, to get our teeth into. So yeah, it's something we're actively engaged in.
We've had a few student life-related questions coming in. Jenny, we got a question from John Paul in North London. He's asked, what help do you get with employability and job hunting?
Yeah, so there's a lot of employability help from the school. They put on a lot of events. There's office hours for people, especially interested in helping you with employability, that you can go to. So at the end of my second year, I went to the employability people to ask about help with interviews and CVs, and I managed to get an internship between my second and third year. And again, I've used it this year in my third year. I know they bring past students to talk about their current experiences and their jobs, so current students can use them for networking. So yeah, that's always really helpful. And actually, through all this, I've just managed to get a job myself. So hopefully I'll be starting a graduate job soon. So I guess that shows that the school's really helpful for employability.
Again, that's really reassuring for those prospective students to hear about those avenues that are opened up after they finish their degree. We got a question in from Kitty, who's asked, are there activities within the economics department and events as well? Joel, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. Yes, obviously, there's loads of things that go on. So I've been involved in there's mock interviews that have been run by different companies, mock assessment centres that are going on. So that's on the employability side. And then on the more kind of academic and student-led side, there's the Economic Society's summit that they do every year that I'll be helping to run this year. So that touches on really important topics. Well, we decide what they are. So this year it was things like inequality, technological change, and those events get in important speakers from well-known economic bodies. We had people from Frontier Economics and a few others I can't remember off the top of my head to come and speak to us about. These are really important speakers that are very influential in their fields, and we get to hear from them, and they spend hours with us talking and networking with us. So it's these kind of things that really do enhance your experience at Kent.
And Dr. Buchanan-Hodgman, we've had a question from Isabel, kind of linking into what we were talking about just now. Isabel's asked, will there be any leniency in terms of required grades due to the current circumstances?
It's always difficult for us to say about leniency, because as you can imagine, it's written on a case-by-case basis. And this kind of builds on what I was saying earlier on about an EPQ. And we're looking for applications. We aren't focusing only on the grades. We're looking at your personal statement. We're looking at your references. We're looking at any other qualifications that you've undertaken or experiences that you've had that can help us get an idea of who you are and your ability as well. Often there is some leeway, there's some leniency, and we know now that this has been a very stressful year, it's been very tough for everybody. So naturally we will have more leniency this year than in previous years, but it's very hard to pin down just how much. So yeah, where we can, we most certainly will be lenient this year, but I can't give you exact numbers on that.
And we're just coming to the end of our virtual open day, but we can still, if you still want to send in questions, we will get those answered. Dr. Buchanan-Hodgman, just a question for you. Obviously, with a lot of students, they're going to be looking at those job opportunities after they finish their degree. What sort of doors would you say Kent opens up for prospective students?
There's a huge number. I mean, we speak to students that come back from our alumni network. We have events in London. We host events on campus where students come back that studied with us maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, even 6 or 7 years ago, telling us what they've done. So you've got people that have gone into finance. You've got people that have gone into policy. You've got people that have made, businesses out of selling steam engines, I think, even. So there's just an enormous variety, and it's fantastic for us to see students that we taught, that we remember, that we like, and they come back and they tell us about what they've been doing and their successes, but also their failures as well. So they tell our current cohort, what they experienced and sort of the trials and tribulations that they've had in the job market, and that allows our students to learn from them. But there's a vast array of different professions that our students go into, from insurance to finance to environment to policy analysis. It really does open lots of doors. And one glance at the breakdown of graduate wages, for example, by degree discipline, you can see economics is right up there with medicine, etc. So economics opens lots of different doors, and it's a great subject to study.
And also, over to you, Jenny. Look to the future. You're telling us that you've already secured something after you finish your degree. How helpful do you think the degree is for students going into the job market?
I think economics is a really good degree to study because, it's a social science, and I think it's probably one of the hardest social sciences, but it gives you a really, you're good at writing from doing it. You can do lots of writing, you're good at maths, so you have those analytical skills. There's a lot of emphasis on practical applications, like you're in the IT rooms a lot, using specialist software. You get skills with presentations, which obviously are really helpful. So you get a really good breadth of skills, so you can really do whatever you want to do. And also, I think it's really good because it's very, you can really understand what's going in the world around you, and it's very relevant to present day things.
And Joel, just a final word to you. Have you got any tips for prospective students about making the most of their time at Kent?
Cool. That is a big question. Okay, one of the things I actually was thinking I missed off from the last question as well, which links into this, is Kenometrics. One of the main things that the department puts on is every Friday for a few hours, all the academics that are involved in, or the PhD students that are involved in teaching you econometrics will come down in their own time and help you with using specialist software that Jenny just mentioned, helping you to code, helping you to use these different softwares that are going to be used in the workplace. And I think the students that are most successful are the students that make the most of those, the students that get along to those, are willing to go the extra mile, because these aren't things necessarily that you have to do. You could go through your whole degree without coding or doing anything like that, but it helps you to apply what you've learned in a way that you're going to remember, and it helps to diversify your skills. And on top of that, I think the students that get along to seminars, ask questions, even if you can do the work and you think you've got it all right, go to the seminars, because there's always something that you won't have understood. There's always something, a misconception that needs to be rooted out. And making the most of every contact hour, and the fact that lecturers have open hours when you can just email them or go and knock on their door, as I mentioned earlier, and ask them questions. Most students don't do that because they think the lecturers are too busy or something, but I'll tell you now they're not, and Luke will hate me for saying that because he'll have hundreds of students at his door. And make the most of them. Get along and get to know the lecturers, because at the end of the day, they're the experts that can help you, and the more they know you, they're the ones that are writing your references.
I think that's a good place to end. Thank you all very much for taking part. And my thanks to Dr. Buchanan Hodgman, Professor Bailey, Joel, Jenny and Lydia for all taking part in this virtual open day. We've hopefully answered as many questions as we can. If you do have any more that you'd like to send in, or you want to find out more about the course, you can go to www.kent.ac.uk/economics or follow the school on social media at Econ Uni Kent. That's about all we've got time for. Again, thank you very much for joining us. We've got an online taster lecture to finish, but that's all from me. Thank you for watching our School of Economics Virtual Open Day, and we hope to see you in the next academic year.
We find ourselves in a situation that only a few months ago was completely unimaginable. The economy is in freefall. The majority of people are unable to work. Schools, colleges are closed, universities are closed. We're unable to travel the world as we've been used to doing. So really we're observing a seismic shift, not only in the relationship between the state and its citizenry, but also in the way that everyday life functions. And never before has policy mattered this much. And as economists, we all have a role to play in informing that policy. I'm Luke Buchanan Hodgman. I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admissions at the University of Kent, and I'm going to provide you with an insight into the ways that economists can think and inform policy around the issue of the coronavirus. Now, obviously, this is an incredibly fast-moving situation, and it takes some time to create these sessions for you, but most of the data we'll be dealing with will be as up-to-date as it possibly can be. And so what I'm going to do with you over the next few sessions is we're going to explore where we are with the coronavirus, what the deaths look like, how the deaths are changing across the world, what some economic implications of the current situation are. In the second session I'm going to do with you, we're going to look at whether or not a crisis of this magnitude, if the forecasts are to be believed, has happened before. So whether this is unprecedented or not, whether we've seen something similar, whether historical experience can actually inform what we think about this problem. Then I'm going to move you on to thinking about some indirect costs as well, because it's not always the observable costs. As Frederick Bastiat said, that which is seen and that which is not seen. Sometimes when we're trying to think about the cost of a crisis like this, it's very easy for our eye to drift off of what are indirect costs. What's the costs of people not being at school? What are the costs of diverting or reallocating so much of the NHS's resources into respiratory wards, for example? These costs sometimes get lost. So we're going to really reorientate our eye back towards these things and think about these as economists. And in the fourth session, we're going to do something quite interesting and stretching the bounds of really what you'd be considered an A-level area, moving into a taster session to what an undergraduate course would be, which is to look at forecasts. What are the forecasts saying? We're going to go over some forecasts in this session, but I'm also going to get you to think about how important the assumptions are around the ideas that we have about the way the economy functions, about the future path of certain variables. We're going to really think about how important those are in determining forecasts that inform policy today. And hopefully from these sessions, not only you're going to have an idea about what's going on at the moment, you're going to have a really good idea about how historical experience can inform what we're going through today. You're going to have an interesting or a conceptual understanding about the many different things that economists have to think about when they're trying to inform policy or calculate costs. And we're also going to put on our skeptical hats and think about forecasts, some of the pitfalls of forecasts, and the way that as A-level students, you become a little bit more, or can become a little bit more questioning around what we see in terms of government publications, think tanks, research institutes, etc. So hopefully you enjoy these sessions.
So the first thing we need to ask ourselves as economists is, where are we? You know, where we are matters. So what are we looking at the moment on the world stage, which is causing us to implement such far-reaching policy? We're faced with a global pandemic, and this is having far-reaching economic effects. The indications that we're observing at the moment, and as I said, these are changing rapidly all the time, is that we are reaching the peak death rate in Western economies. And we've observed thus far an unprecedented government response in the UK. Now, you'll hear a lot this term, unprecedented. And I think we mean unprecedented in this case in two different ways. When we're thinking about pandemics of the past, we weren't so highly globalized, so highly interlinked. And so although we've seen health crises, this is a very different type of crisis that we're observing here, and therefore the policies required are going to be very different also. And therefore the policies that have been implemented, although there are some commonalities between countries, they're very new to us. Now, as economists, we like to lean on historical precedents. We like to be able to look at historical episodes that bear some resemblance of what we're going through at the moment to give us a guide for how policy is going to have an impact today. But we really can't rely on that in this case, which makes the job of economists particularly difficult, but also it's a very interesting thing to study. What are the government responses? How do we think these are going to mitigate the short, medium and long run effects? So what are we going to explore today? We're going to have a look at some current UK data. We're going to have a look at some death rate data, but we're going to have a look at some UK GDP data and unemployment data as well. We're going to think about what the economic consequences will be in the UK of this crisis. And really we're going to ponder about what the potential success or failure of handling this situation could be in terms of a reassessment of the importance of the state in British lives. Now, you know, a lot of you will be out of school at the moment. I think 2/3 of school children and A-level students are receiving no formal instruction. And so really the question you may be asking yourselves is, why should I be interested? Okay, now, as economists, we need to be interested because, as I've said, economists have a critical role in informing policy. So in terms of where we currently are, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. Those of you that read the Financial Times and try to keep abreast of what's going on at the moment will have seen lots of graphs recently. Here's one from April 22nd, and it shows a range of different economies, 7-day rolling averages. And the reason why actually we look at these rolling averages is quite interesting when you look at the data on a weekly basis. You see on Monday and Sunday that death rates seem to be lower, and this is a bit of an odd observation. You'd wonder why, you know, is this virus killing fewer people on a Sunday and a Monday? This is just a statistical discrepancy. So we take rolling averages to smooth out those discrepancies over a 7-day period. And as you can see, in a range of different countries, the US, the UK, Germany, you're seeing a levelling off. What we're going to do in the next few minutes is take a snapshot of the UK economy. And we're going to go over some really key macro variables, which are of critical importance at the moment. So the first one links directly to the policy mix that I spoke about earlier, and it's the deficit. We're going to, or the OBR I should say, expects 180 billion in additional government borrowing over the next 3 months, which takes the deficit to a whopping 14% of GDP. The last time we saw a deficit this large was in the Second World War. Even in the depths of the financial crisis, we got to around 10% of GDP. The OBR is expecting us to get to 15% of GDP. And what about GDP itself? 35% fall in real GDP. Now this is just astonishing. You can see from the graph here that even during the depths of the Spanish flu, we didn't see a quarterly decline in GDP that we're expecting at the moment. And, you know, this is just quite a staggering figure. I believe in the UK context, we have to go right the way back to the early 18th century in order to find a like decline in GDP. But what about other economic impacts? Now, we're so caught up sometimes in focusing on key macro aggregates, GDP, debt, unemployment, inflation. But there are so many costs that we can't see. For example, earlier on I pointed you towards the Sutton Trust article about the amount of school children that are receiving formal instruction. And that differs a lot depending on whether you're going to private school, grammar school, where you're located, etc. Now, there's studies from Norway now that are looking at calculating the impact on a child's future lifetime earnings from a day lost in education in early years, and we're looking at £160 per day lost. So, when we're trying to think about the economic impact, it's really important to think about that which is seen and that which is not seen. And this is a famous statement by Frederick Bastiat. And, really what we're trying to get at here is that some costs are easy to calculate. But what about the other costs that we're being sort of burdened with because of this problem? An explosion in domestic violence and abuse, people, especially children and A-level students, foregoing crucial education opportunities, the reallocation of health resources into respiratory wards and away from other treatments, a lengthening of cancer treatment times and waiting times, for example. These are critical costs that we are incurring due to the allocation of resources which this crisis has necessitated. This isn't a criticism of government policy, it's just an observation. So I think as economists it's crucial that we remember that. And now finally onto unemployment, another really observable direct cost that's going to emerge from this crisis. 2 million more unemployed in the second quarter of 2020, and this remains elevated for years to come. 1.4 million more unemployed until 2024, I believe the OBR forecast stated. And you can see here the difference between the sharp V-shaped recovery that we saw in real GDP and this prolonged, drawn-out process where unemployment peaks and then takes a long time to fall. So the current battery of economic policies really can be summed up by targeting three key areas: big government transfers to people suffering economic hardship, support for businesses through the furlough scheme, and providing support for businesses through the loan scheme. And this mix of policies is aimed at trying to mitigate the collapse in aggregate demand, and it's trying to ensure that there's not a more systemic, a more structural breakdown in employer-employee relationships, which could lead to significant supply-side problems in the future. And this whole situation could spark a deeper debate. If the government's successful, may we ask questions that we really haven't asked since the 70s? What is the role of government in public life? Should the government have a more significant role in managing the economy, for example? But also, what if the government mishandles it? It could be very, very costly. Okay, we're very early on in the current parliament, but still, it would cause questions to be asked. And also, we've got very new policies here. This is unprecedented policies for an unprecedented crisis. But often, and as we saw in the Second World War, with changing nature of the state and welfare and health service, could these policies, once established and once rooted, could these become more firm? Could they be policies that maybe we'd look to try in future crises? I'm not sure, but these are interesting questions to ask ourselves. And, really finally, how do we even judge government mishandling or having success in managing a situation like this? Dr. Michael Donnelly stated that it's really like comparing apples and oranges to bananas. It's very difficult to take one country's statistics and benchmark that against another country's. Look, so I hope you found this interesting. And it gives you a bit more flavour to what's going on at the moment, given that you're not in class and you're in this sort of grey area when you're usually revising for exams or heading into summer term. Hope it gives you something interesting to think about. In the next session, we're going to have a look at what this term unprecedented really means. We're going to have a look at some historical data. We're going to have a look at the UK, what the crisis has been before. We're then in another session going to look at the importance of assumptions about forecasts. Now, this is really interesting. How we expect forecasts or how we build our assumptions into economic models really determine the kind of recoveries that we're seeing in different forecasts from the OBR, the Treasury, the National Institute, for example, and also how likely these assumptions are in light of past data. So look, I hope you found it interesting. If you have any questions, do get back to me. It's econuga@kent.ac.uk. It will come through to my inbox, and I hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you.